All right, well, welcome to my new creative project called Stats Are for Losers. I guess I should explain a little bit why that is what it is called. And the reason is that one of the funnier things that statements I heard this year, and it's actually not a new statement, but it's head football coaches in the NFL basically giving reasons for why they do what they do, and instead of having a deep statistical analysis for it, they actually say, this is just it's a gut feeling. It's something I got to try. And most recently, Mike Tomlin of the Steelers, he used this when the question came up because they changed from Justin Fields as the quarterback because Russell Wilson had hurt himself in training, and they decided to switch, which was kind of felt like it was a weird move since they had been winning, or at least winning enough with Justin Fields, but they felt like Wilson lost his job for injury, and there's a lot of machismo behind that. You can't lose because you got injured. You can lose because you don't play well, and so they're like, well, we're going to start Wilson, and who cares about the stats or what it looks like? And so the quote is, stats are for losers. The full quote, apparently, if you look into the history, is that stats are for losers and assistant coaches, which was in reference to the idea that there was a team that had lost a game, but they did good statistically, and the head coach was like, who cares? I'm also getting my second master's degree in data science, and so this will be a good fun way for me I love statistics, love sports. It's a good way to use some of those skills, and also kind of walk through visualization of those as a new creative project. So hopefully you find it fun too. And hopefully you'll stick around. This week, episode 1, the very first one, we're going to talk about the Washington Commanders, and are they a playoff-bound team through Week 7. So just be fair to say this is prior to them playing the Chicago Bears today. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon before they play the Bears. I'll talk a little bit about what my expectations for that a little bit, but let's jump into are the Washington Commanders for real, or are they fool's gold? So, yeah, Washington Commanders, they play in the NFC East, and they have traditionally, for at least last several years, been very, 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 very bad. And they've done some things to change. They have a new head coach, Dan Quinn, who came over from the Dallas Cowboys, who was the defensive coordinator, now a head coach. Quinn has been a head coach before, and Dan Quinn brought in new coordinators, obviously. We'll talk about the offensive coordinator specifically here in a moment. But they've seemed to have turned their fortunes around. So after Week 7, so last year, 2023 season, after Week 7, they had amassed 3 wins and 4 losses, and this year through 7 weeks, they've had 5 wins and 2 losses. So what has been the difference? So let's look at the stats, and the place that you really see this more than any other place is in the offensive stats. So here we have Washington 2023. And their averages of offense, and Washington 2024, and then just for comparison to the rest of the NFL in 2024. And this is all offense, and just looking at the total yards per game, how many rushing yards they've had per game, the passing yards per game, and then, of course, the points per game. So 2023, again, Washington finished. They were 3-4 through 7. They won one more game in 2023. So that's how they ended up being 4-12, 13, 17 games in the NFL now, 4-13. And so this is what their offense looked like last year. And you can notice, I think right off the top, you notice here that between last year and this year, a major difference is that they are averaging almost 70 more yards on the ground per game. The passing is the same, but that 70 more yards has led to an increase of 12 more points per game than they had last year. And they are currently being there above, beating the average of an average team again. So this is averages are, and statistics are something that can be definitely skewed because of the outliers possibly even, but even having really large numbers and really small numbers. So there are so if you think about the average team, so the average team would maybe be hypothetically in the NFL one that would finish 9-7 or 8-9, somewhere in that almost 500 kind of average. They're just going to win as many as they're going to lose. So the average in 2024, they are, they're gaining 40 more yards. They're gaining almost 10 points more per game. And that is really awesome. That is a huge improvement from last year. And so there's a couple of reasons why this is happening. So let's dive into that of why Washington suddenly is able to do offense better than they have been able to do in the past. So first thing up, let's give props to the offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. You may know Cliff if you follow football at all. He was the head coach in Arizona from 2019 to 2022. Before that, he was the head coach at Texas Tech. He was known as, and Texas Tech being in the Big 12, and the Big 12 at that time was known as one of the bigger, better college conferences for offense. They weren't known very well for defense, and in fact, they were often kind of ridiculed because they could put up these big offensive scores, but then when they got into things like bowl games against other teams, other conferences, they often were not able to match the defensive intensity, and so they were known offensively. Texas Tech definitely was known for high flying offenses, scoring a lot of points, not super great on the defense. So he is a offensive mind, and I think a good one. I think given the right tools and given the right place, he shows that he can achieve success, and he's doing that this year in Washington. Now, we'll talk about some of the players that he is. At least one player that has arrived that has given him kind of a fresh tool, something to use. That's been super helpful to him. But in this case, we are looking at. We're not talking about that yet. Let's think through. I wanted to point out that when Cliff was the head coach of Arizona. Here is, and all of my stats are coming from the Pro Football Reference. So if you want to go check those out, you can find that online in the Pro Football Reference. They have great stats, great stuff. Not a sponsor, just I find them helpful. So here you see Cliff as he was a head coach in Arizona, and look at this. How many? So these are the team ranked. Where the team ranked in the NFL for these years in yards. And so here you go. In 2019, they were 10th. 2020, they were 7th. 2021, they were 10th. And then there was this kind of odd year, 2022, which I believe can really coincides with the rise of Kyler Murray. And they went down in rushing, but they went way up. They didn't go way up. They didn't do good at all. They were 18th. They were okay. They were 22nd rushing, 18th in passing, and then of course after that, Cliff no longer had a job. And as a head coach, you're not always the offensive coordinator, obviously, but you aren't focused fully on that. So that's fair to say. But you can take some. I think some history here and say that it's pretty clear that regardless of what, whether he likes to throw the ball or not, he definitely likes to establish the run. He definitely likes to establish a run, and he has historically done that, and that's why you see, going back to this graphic here, where we look at this, that he's that two things, and we'll talk about a little deeper into this too. They have been able to increase from 1 year to the next almost 70 yards of rushing offense with the same running backs. Mostly the same running backs. They did get Austin Eckler, but he is honestly more of a pass catching, and Brian Robinson, the same running back who did get injured, but predominantly has been running the same. So it's not like personnel has really changed, but he is focused on that to increase. One interesting thing as we get into players is to think about is that there is Jayden Daniels is the quarterback that they drafted in the he's a rookie. They drafted in the first round. There was this big question whether it was going to be Daniels or Williams, and obviously Williams went to Chicago, and that's a big matchup that's about to happen as I record this. But they won Daniels, and Washington even said that they prefer Daniels anyway, which is something you say when you get that player and you have the second pick. You're going to say that. You're not going to say, oh, hey, I wish I had the other guy, at least not out in the media and all those kind of things. And so one of the interesting things, two big things about Jayden is that he is a rookie, but also he is a dual threat quarterback, which means that he can both pass and throw the ball. And so you can see in his stats here, the thing that sticks out probably the most glaring is that he has completed 75.6% of his passes, which is a super high mark for a rookie. And if he continues at that clip to be able to complete passes like that, Washington's going to be okay. And he would make a strong candidate to be Rookie of the Year. But on the other side of that, you noticed again that Washington's rushing has gone up by about 60 yards. And so Jayden Daniels this year, in the games that he played most of 7 games, or he played 6 games, and some of the 7th game got injured, which is always a scary thing when you have a dual threat quarterback, because they're going to be running more, they're going to be out there, they're going to be taking more hits, they're going to be having more opportunity to be injured. But he has rushed for 50 yards per game. Remember that part of that too then is there is a more emphasis for the Commanders on rushing the ball, but Daniels is making a huge difference. So Kingsbury has got this kind of this tool, I wouldn't say a gimmick, but a threat that makes both rushing and throwing more effective in the same way that like Lamar Jackson does for the Baltimore Ravens. But even still, Jackson is even more dangerous because he has Derrick Henry now, and that's just a crazy combination. And in fact, the two best rushing attacks in the NFL are also the two highest scoring, which is counterintuitive. But both Washington and Baltimore are averaging 31 points per game, and they're both the top rushing attacks, or two of the top rushing attacks, and both of them have a quarterback who also likes to run the ball. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that you can draw that statistical information through there. And one of the things that makes that interesting to me is that the NFL has been known as a passing league for some time. Like everything is you got to be good at passing. You got to have a quarterback that can throw the ball. And so quarterbacks and receivers have been getting paid premium dollars for their contracts. And you'll hear me say this probably time and time again, and I'll take a look into Dallas themselves. But I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan by nature. I grew up in Texas, and so if you follow football, you know that Dallas just locked up their quarterback and their top receiver with major contracts. Interestingly enough, they're also one of the worst teams at running the football, and they are not doing. They're okay, but signs are pointing to that they may not be that okay. But we'll see. They're coming off a bye, and we'll see what happens tonight in San Francisco. But But it is something that what happens in the NFL is just something that naturally occurs, is that if somebody, some person, some coaching staff finds success in a particular thing, people copy that. If you're around in the early 2000s, there was a Wildcat offense that went around when I think Miami didn't have a quarterback, and so they decided just to hike it direct snap to their running back, and which means that so the advantage of that this Wildcat offense was that, and you didn't have a quarterback, so you had an extra blocker, because usually it is 10 on 11 because you have the quarterback who doesn't block. So you have 10 players on the offense, and then actually one person's carrying the ball, so it's 9 on 11. So you have 11 defensive players, and so the advantage is to the defense because you can't block all of those people. Now you may get yards because it may take a while for the unblocked people to get to the person carrying the ball. But with a Wildcat offense, what you do is you actually have you have now it's 10 on 11, and so now you're doing even better as far as number of people you have to block. Now whether those people block well or not, but also depending on your running back, you also kind of are basically saying that you're more likely going to run, and so that changes the way defenses respond, and so they're going to stack the box. They're going to put more people up closer to the line of scrimmage, what makes it harder to run. But it's also something that they don't usually see, and so seeing it and defensive players trying to figure out how to responding to it, like that's kind of the gaming back and forth between offensives and defensives of trying to confuse the defense, and the defense is trying to confuse the offense and trying to make it hard to run their plays, and the offense is trying to disguise what they're going to do so that the defense doesn't know, because if the defense knows through tendencies and through particular formations, then they're going to be better at stopping them, and so one of the things that's happened over the past 4 or 5 years, especially, but we have, like I said, we've become a passing NFL. Is really, the coaches have really doubled down on the passing game. And this year you're actually seeing some defensive kind of putting in some packages, those teams, because teams are no longer paying premium dollars for running backs. They're not using big draft picks. They're not putting big contracts down there. Then teams are way more focused on stopping the pass, and so teams that can run the ball well have been pretty successful this year when they have been able to run the ball well. New Orleans is one of those teams that were able to run the ball very well in the first couple of weeks, and they did really well, and then that dropped off, and now they're not doing so well. Of course, they also lost Derek Carr and to injury and those kind of things. But so one of the early successes for the Commanders has to be understood, that is their rushing attack. Will that last? And that's the question that we want to look into. So here we go. Let's talk about the quality of opponents that Washington has run the ball on. And so weeks 1 through 7, here we go. You will notice, if you will take a look with me here, that of the 7 teams that Washington has played, 2 of them have winning records right now as of week 7. And that would be Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Baltimore Ravens. Tampa Bay is 4-3, Baltimore is 5-2. And those are the only 2 teams that Washington has played that have had a winning record or currently have a winning record. All the other teams, so that's 5 of them, the Giants, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Ravens, the Panthers, they all have losing records. And the Cleveland Browns and the Carolina Panthers are respectively 1-5 and 1-6, meaning they've only won 1 game. So through week 7, the Commanders' opponents have a combined 19 wins compared to a combined 30 losses. So you could say that the Commanders have benefited from a very kind schedule. Defenses, none of these teams, short of Baltimore, are known for having a very good defense. Arizona can have a very good offense every now and then. Cincinnati has this tendency to get off to a slow start, but they can have a good offense. But none of them are known as defensive powerhouses, save Baltimore. And even Baltimore seems to be less strong on the defensive side than it has been in the past. But so still, I don't want to take away too much away from the Commanders' success. Because last year they showed that they could lose a whole bunch of games, and this year they are showing that they can at least beat the bad teams, or at least have consistently beat the bad teams. One of the interesting things about this altogether, though, is that the lowest amount that the Commanders have scored through 7 weeks is 21 points. So then that was against the Giants. 20 points. They lost against the Tampa Bay, only scoring 20. And so, but even still, they scored at least 20 points in all of their games. And that's a pretty impressive number to hit, considering that on average, if your 500 team is going to average about 21 points per game. The fact that they have hit that as their minimum, twice, and then been above that on all their other games, it's pretty significant. Now, the other side of that, though, is Washington's defense does seem to have some issues against good offensive teams. And so Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, Baltimore Ravens, of course, all of those teams scored at least 30 points on the defense. So it's good to be able to score at least 20 points every game. It's not as good if you can't score more than 30 or more when your defense is giving those up to good offenses. And so that's why there is at least some doubt that Washington is as good as maybe their record, their stats imply. They blew out a couple of teams, and so that's helping their scoring. With scoring 42 on Arizona and 40 on Carolina. It may be skewing their scoring a little bit up, but we'll see. So. That being said, I will say that I'm a little leery of the Commanders' early schedule because it does seem to be pretty cupcake filled and unbalanced to teams that aren't doing well, so it's hard to say what that might mean for the future of the Commanders. But hey, let's take a look at what I think. So here we go, weeks 8 through 18. As I said, currently, and you may be listening to this after the game is over with the Bears, but currently the Bears are going to be playing. The Commanders are going to play the Bears this afternoon, and I predict that they will lose. The Commanders will not be able to the Commanders will struggle, I think, on offense. And even if they're able to score, so similar to Baltimore, even if they're able to score, so even if they don't struggle hard, and one thing to note is Jayden Daniels is slotted to play, even though he has had some injured ribs, so that'll be something to watch as well. But versus Chicago may not have as good an offense, but they have a much better defense. And against good defenses, we just haven't seen that Washington can score a lot of points. That being said, if Washington's defense can keep Chicago from scoring 20 points, there's a chance that Washington could win. But I predict that Chicago's defense will be the strongest force on the field and will lead them to victory. So I also have a lot of friends where I live currently that are Bears fans, so good luck to you guys. Next week, they've got New York Giants. The Giants have not been good. They do seem to have a better defense. They are one of the teams that held Washington to the fewest amount of scores the first time, but New York has seemed to have gone in a worse direction. They from week to week, including whether or not they're going to have Daniel Jones as the quarterback. So I say Washington will get the win. Pittsburgh is always known for their defenses. With the addition of Russell Wilson, talking about that as what Tomlin talked about, as stats are for losers. With the addition, at least against in the first game, and we'll see how this continues. But he went off on the Jets and helped Pittsburgh Pittsburgh score its most points of this season, and so that combination of actually a really good defense and a decent enough offense, I think Washington will lose. Philadelphia, this one is in Philadelphia, and so I'm going to be honest with NFC East teams. I am just going to take the easy route out and say that the home team's gonna the win. So for Philadelphia, in Philadelphia, Philadelphia wins. Dallas, in Dallas, Dallas wins. Tennessee has a good defense, but they have a terrible offense. I think the Commanders can overcome that. So let's call that a win. I'll get a week 14 bye, so they won't be playing anybody. Get some, hopefully, recharge and get ready. New Orleans. New Orleans is an interesting team. They also like to run the ball. They don't have as good a defense. I think they would be matched defensively similar to the Commanders, if not a little worse. And so I think in that one, the Commanders win again. Philadelphia comes to Washington. I'm going to give the Commanders the win there because I think it's pretty close with all the NFC East teams other than the Giants. That any one of those could win any given week. Atlanta, I think they just have a decent enough offense that they're going to be able to outscore the Commanders on offense. And so I say Commanders lose in Atlanta, and then Dallas at Washington. Maybe a meaningless game for Dallas at that point. They may be so far behind that, or maybe there'll be a revenge game. They'll be trying to get in the playoffs. I don't know, but let's call it that. Again, it's a home game for the Commanders, and so it's because I'm splitting those. So what that would mean is that over the next, from week 8 to 18, they would have 5 wins and 5 losses. And so currently they're 5-2. So that would put them at 10-7. And depending on how the other teams do in the NFC East may even make them that could be a super exciting game in week 18 versus Dallas, because it could determine who wins the NFC East. And it's unlikely, I will just say this, it's unlikely that the NFC East will send a wild card team, noting that the Vikings, the Lions, the Packers are all doing super well in the Central, and so it's very doubtful that the NFC East will see a wild card spot. So the first place team the spoils will go to that victor, and so it could be a 10-7 Washington team that goes from 4-13 last year to 2-7 and get into the playoffs. At which point, I would say that Jayden Daniels, if he is still the driving force, would have a very good case to argue that he is the quarterback offensive rookie of the year, and that lots of things can change. That's a lot of football left to play. But obviously with the Bears quarterback Caleb Williams, also making a strong case, at least the last couple of weeks, to be an offensive rookie of the year. But I think it's it's maybe we'll look into that. But it's a hard road for Chicago too, because they're going through to end up in the playoffs even. They're going to go through the Vikings, the Lions, the Packers, and those are going to be tough games. And so again, if Jayden can continue to complete passes at 75%, that's a high number, and well deserving. If we get to the end of the week 18 and he still has that mark, yeah, I think he's going to be a pretty easy vote in for Rookie of the Year. But we'll see. I mean, he could be injured. Again, that's a scary thing with quarterbacks that like to run. They do tend to be injured, so he could be injured. But yeah, so here's a possible path for the bottom of the barrel Washington Redskins last year. I said Redskins. Sorry. The Washington Commanders. Old habits die hard. The Washington Commanders to the bottom of the barrel to rise up in 2024 and go to the playoffs. It definitely is there, and it hurts me to say that as a Cowboys fan, but the paths are there. The way they've been playing, definitely a possibility. Their schedule, I mean, honestly, other than Pittsburgh, and maybe Atlanta. And other than Atlanta and Chicago today, obviously, but they're not really playing a strong enough defense that seems like it'll slow down their offense if their offense continues to play at the pace that it plays. If teams can figure out what they're doing, obviously that's always a risk. The NFL's made up of really smart defensive coordinators and really smart people who are always looking for how to stop offenses and using all the data and stats and all that kind of stuff. So if they're able to figure that out, then maybe Washington has a rougher time. But based on the way things are going, and injuries are always a big thing, it could be, but based on the way things are going, I could definitely see this happening. So it's not a super strong endorsement of that, but hey, if you're a Commanders fan, there's hope. There's hope, and it's more hope than you had last year. As long as you, although to say, against the Panthers, which is again not a very good football team, based on what we can all see in their records and how they get beat. Mariota came in to replace Daniels and didn't do terribly. And so, could the system continue? Especially if they are able to continue running at the same pace that they're able to run, and complete a similar number, maybe not 75% of passes, but still a high number by Mariota. The offense is still going to be okay. But again, it's going to be better, obviously, if Daniel stays healthy. So there you go. Stats are for losers. Thanks for listening to that first. And watching, if you watched online. So this is going to be a video podcast, and so I'm going to walk through a presentation. All the stats and all that stuff is going to be on the screen. So if you can listen, if you want to see the things, then obviously you can find it on Spotify and YouTube as a video podcast. And yeah, this is the first attempt. It may look very different into the future, but I hope that if you stuck around and listened, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I don't know, I'm not sure the frequency, but every now and then, keep your eye open for another podcast from Stats Are for Losers. All right, you guys, be blessed.